Hi, my name is Dr. John Douillard, and today I want to talk to you about salt. We've been told for many years that salt is bad for you. As you age, you should eat less of it. It's bad for your heart, bad for your blood pressure, bad for your circulation. But really, when you look at the studies which we've done in the article associated with this video, the studies don't support these recommendations that it's really valuable for us to eat a low salt diet. In one study in the American Journal of Hypertension, they studied over 2,000 people, and they found no evidence to support that a low salt diet would actually decrease the risk of a heart attack, stroke, or death. And that was with people with or without high blood pressure. In another study, 2014 review from the Journal of American Medicine, very prestigious journal, they found that when people have a low salt diet, that it actually can increase the risk of heart disease. They also found in that study that a low salt diet will lower blood pressure, but just a little, 1 to 4 milligrams of mercury, so millimeters of mercury. So that means, like, if you have a blood pressure of 120/80, it might lower it from 120 to 119, or maybe from 120 to 116. It's not a huge difference. And there are other studies, many other studies, that show that when you actually have a low salt diet, that your blood pressure will increase. And some studies show that when you have a lot of salt in your diet, your blood pressure will actually decrease. So whether it affects your blood pressure or not, it seems to be very controversial. And in one study, in the Journal of American Medicine study, they found that it seems to be an individual thing. So the studies seem to be not really clear. So what I suggest to do is get a blood pressure cuff if you're worried about your blood pressure and your salt intake, and take your blood pressure and eat salt, don't eat salt, and begin to see if you're sensitive to salt intake with regard to your blood pressure. This is what the Journal of American Medicine study actually said, is that we have individual sensitivity. So not a bad idea to do that than to sort of stay in this place of limbo. We're really not sure one way or another. What's also interesting is that all these studies were done with regular refined salt that have caking agents, and all the other minerals have been boiled and depleted out of the salt. So it really renders the salt with only one electrolyte, sodium chloride. Now, sodium actually lives around your cell, all the cells in your body, in the intercellular, extracellular fluid. So what happens if you have lots of salt in your diet, it can actually pull the potassium, which stays inside the cell, and pull it out of the cell, and actually create a level of dehydration of the cell that water simply will not satisfy. So the idea traditionally was salt was full of minerals, whether it be a Celtic sea salt or a Himalayan pink salt or a Redmond salt from the brines of Utah. They all have 60 to 80 other minerals in them, loaded with potassium and loaded with all the electrolytes and other minerals that you need in trace elements. So it's very important for us to have a really good salt that can help to replenish, depending on how much salt you've eaten, and whether you're eating processed foods or chips or popcorn at the movie theater, you're really getting this refined salt, which actually has a very cellular dehydrating effect, which is not good for us. So we need to, in most cases, we need to stop the processed foods, get rid of the refined salt, add good quality salt to our diet. About a quarter of a teaspoon with lots of water per day is a good idea to help get you some mineral balance. And because we have this kind of epidemic of having so much of the refined salt in our diet for so long, many of us are somewhat depleted in potassium. So not a bad idea, and I write about this in the article, to have more potassium-rich foods in our diet. Ancient humans clearly had 10 to 15 to 20 times more potassium in their diet than we do today. So that's one of the sort of the screaming jump off the page deficiencies that we have as modern humans that ancient humans had. And those foods are like beans, mushrooms, avocados, greens, yogurts, potatoes, root vegetables, squashes, all of these things, bananas, of course, all of these things have a lot of potassium in them, and very important for us to begin to shift our diet to having more of these potassium-rich foods, definitely much less of the refined salts in our diet. And if you're gonna have salt in your diet, which is a good idea, to have whole salt, good salts in your diet, as opposed to bad salts. And one other study that I think is interesting is that in Japan, they have some of the highest salt intake in the world. And people say that people who have that high salt intake, particularly in Japan, have a higher incidence of stroke and heart disease, and they do. But studies have actually been unable to prove and connect the link between, Japan's high incidence of heart disease and their salt intake. And you got to remember that people in Japan live the longest. They're always at the top end, the highest level of longevity around the world. So a high salt diet hasn't been proven to really show us that there's risk of heart disease in many of the studies we're looking at. But if you're going to have salt, get good quality salt, and definitely always be thinking, because our culture and our diet is deficient in potassium-rich foods, to get those potassium-rich foods. Go to my website, read the article associated with this video, where I go into detail into this whole concept of salt and all the research behind it and the list of potassium-rich foods. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.